What if I told you that you could do an insane amount of burst damage that will make the rest of your group wonder why they are even there by only pressing a single button? You're probably thinking, man, this guy's full of shit. Time to skip this video. But I promise you, just hear me out for a second before you go hitting that extremely tempting dislike button. The Arcane Mage has always been known for its ridiculous burst damage and amazing performance for early and 2 expansions. And in Cataclysm, this is no different. In fact, it gets even better. Beforehand, in Wrath, Arcane Mages were kings at single target, but wet noodles when it came to AoE. However, this issue is solved by a new talent they get, which reduces the global cooldown of their Arcane Explosion, and a couple of extra things, which we will touch on in more detail in a moment. Now, this guide is going to be pretty in-depth, so grab a cup of coffee, strap in your seatbelts, and let's get right into the nitty-gritty titty of the Arcane Mage. So, for talents, let's start off with what they will look like at level 80 when the pre-patch hits. There are a few optional choices, but this is what I would go with to start. Some people don't take improved Arcane Explosion, and I think this is a huge mistake, for especially when leveling and doing dungeons. It is amazing AoE damage for clearing packs super fast, and actually allows the Arcane Mage to pull several enemies when questing compared to previously when it was just faster and easier to do one at a time. Now, as we level up from 80 to 83, I would put 3 points into Burning Soul in the Fire Tree for the reduced cast time lost from taking damage, as it is super nice, and there's always those moments where you just need that one cast to go off to finish an enemy, but you just keep getting bitch slapped and frustrated because you just can't blow your load. And finally, your last 2 points, I suggest getting your second point in Invocation. This is another talent I see people not taking, which is insane to me because there is always something to interrupt when doing dungeons. So it's basically just a free 10% damage for 8 seconds, and Counterspell has a 24-second cooldown, so it's practically up 30% of the time. So if you don't take this, you're just crazy and should seek professional help. But all jokes aside, your last point is very optional. I like to put it into improved blink for the extra move speed after blinking, as it's just a very nice quality of life to get in and out of different mechanics and to reposition yourself when needed. Now, some of this changes when we go into doing raids due to not needing the AoE all that much anymore. For raids, I suggest you'll take out the 2 points from improved Arcane Explosion and take the 1 point out of improved blink, or wherever you decided to put that last optional point, and put those 3 points into Prismatic Cloak. The 6% damage reduction is just amazing for any raid-wide damage that you will be taking, and it will help your healers out immensely. You should not go without this. So, let's talk about glyphs. To start off, for prime glyphs, you will take Arcane Blast for the extra damage. This is your main damage spell, so this is mandatory. Then you want to take Mage Armor. This will help you out a lot when you're in your preservation phase, which we will discuss later in the rotation section. Then finally, you will take Glyph of Arcane Missiles for a bit of extra crit chance, which is, it's really just another chance for getting some mana back thanks to your talent Master of Elements. For major glyphs, you will take Arcane Power. This will allow you to cast Blink, Mirror Image, and Mana Shield off the global cooldown for some extra damage. It's worth noting that you always want to keep Mana Shield up due to our talent Incanter's Absorption, which gives you extra damage when your Mana Shield is damaged. Second, we want Glyph of Evocation, as the heal is just super useful to keep ourselves topped up in case we're lacking a bit of health when we need to get our mana back up. And lastly is more preference. I would suggest that if you're doing dungeons, to take Glyph of Blink, as it will synergize with the 1 point you put in Improved Blink, and then when you're raiding, you could swap it out for Invisibility to synergize with Prismatic Cloak to allow you another means of repositioning yourself when needed. For minor glyphs, you want to always take Mirror Images, as this will actually provide a damage increase thanks to our passive 25% arcane damage we get from our arcane specialization. Then I always take Slowfall, as it will help save on bag space from no longer needing a reagent, and it's just a nice quality of life. Lastly, I take Glyph of Armors so I don't have to reapply Mage Armor as often, but you could also take one of the mana reduction glyphs. If you do, I suggest taking Glyph of Conjuring, as it will provide a lot more benefit than Arcane Brilliance will. Let's talk about rotations. To start off with, your single target rotation consists of 2 phases. The first phase is known as the burn phase. This is where we use all our buff spells, which I would macro together. So Arcane Power, any unused trinket you might have, a mana gem thanks to our talent improved mana gem, which gives us spell power. Berserking if you're a troll. If you aren't troll, you should become a troll. But if not, whatever race you are, if your racial provides a damage bonus, then use that too. Then whichever potion you have, all of this should be macroed into one button. It is also worth noting you should cast a couple of Arcane Blasts before pressing this in order to still get the mana value from your mana gem. Now, after pressing your buff macro, this is very important and difficult, so listen carefully. You want to use Arcane Blast into Arcane Blast, into Arcane Blast, into Arcane Blast, and then a few more Arcane Blasts till you're at about 30% mana. I know, it's difficult. Trust me, you will get the hang of it. Now, once you reach 30% mana, just pop Evocation to get back to about full mana. You should also use Mirror Image after buffing, as it will be off the global cooldown thanks to your glyph. Now you're in the second phase, known as the Preservation phase. This is where you want to stay as close to 100% mana as you can to maximize the benefit from your mastery. To do this, you'll want to just cast Arcane Blast between 2 and 4 times based on your current gear. Obviously, the better gear you have, the higher mana pool, meaning your Mage Armor will regenerate more, and your spells will cost a lower percentage of your max mana. So, after casting 2 to 4 Arcane Blasts, if you have an Arcane Missiles proc, use that to reset the stacks. If you don't have an Arcane Missiles proc, then use Arcane Barrage instead. Then, just repeat this until your evocation is almost back up, and you can go into another burn phase. You should also cast Flame Orb in the Preservation phase anytime it is up, as the extra damage ticks can proc an Arcane Missiles charge. Just repeat all this until you're topping the damage meters and making everyone else cry at how easy yet broken your class is. Now, as for AoE situations, there isn't really much to discuss. You just want to use Arcane Blast 4 times to stack up the passive buff, then spam Arcane Explosion till your stacks are close to running out, but don't let them drop off. You want to refresh the stacks with a single Arcane Blast and then continue to spam Arcane Explosion again. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the utility that only Arcane Mage has. If you want to hear about all the other general Mage utility spells that all the specs get, I talk about that in my previous Fire Mage video, so make sure to go check that out, as there's some very useful information there. So, first off, Arcane Mages provide the party with a 3% damage buff from our talent, Arcane Tactics. It is worth noting that this does not stack with Paladin's Communion or Hunter's Ferocious Inspiration. So if they are bringing that themselves into your raid, then you can put that point somewhere else. Another spell that Arcane Mages get is Focus Magic, which we spec into on our talent tree. This is usually traded between Arcane Mages, but in cases where you're in a dungeon group with no other Arcane Mage, you want to put this on either another DPS caster or your healer. Do not put this on your melee, as it is not a 3% crit chance, it is 3% crit chance with spells only. Now, I know I've made that mistake before myself, so also, especially in raids or dungeon encounters that require a lot of healing throughput, you should probably put Focus Magic on your healer to help them out. So another spell Arcane Mages get access to is Slow, which reduces the target's move speed, range attack speed, and casting speed. You don't need to cast this. Thanks to our talent Nether Vortex, Arcane Blast will automatically apply it to your target if nobody else is currently affected by it. If you really want to min-max on, for example, bosses where an ad spawns that you need to swap to, you can cast Slow on it before DPSing, as since the boss will already have it on them from your Arcane Blast, it won't automatically be applied when you swap to the ad. So as for stat priority on Arcane Mage, your number 1 is Intellect, which is pretty self-explanatory as it provides you with spell power and crit chance. It will also increase your mana pool, which makes it easier to maximize your damage from your mastery. Second, we want to focus on getting our hit rating up to 17%. Then after that, everything will go into haste up to the soft cap. I could go into depth about different haste caps and everything that affects it, but that would require a whole video on its own. The main idea is you want to get your Arcane Blast to a 1 second cast time, as that's the lowest you can get your global cooldown to. Any haste over this is wasted and should be put into our next priority, which is Mastery. Last priority is Crit. A little bit can be nice, but it's just not as good as Hasted Mastery. Let's discuss gems. Now, it's worth noting that all of this can change based on your current gear, so when it comes down to it, you should really just sim your character and find out what's best for your current situation. I'm also only going to mention blue gems as we won't have access to the epic ones right away, but for a general idea, your meta socket should be filled with a burning Shadow Spirit Diamond, red sockets filled with Brilliant Inferno Ruby, yellow sockets, if the socket bonus is less than 10 intellect, then use the same gem as you do in red sockets. If it is 10 intellect or more and you're haste capped, insert an Artful Ember Topaz. If you still need more haste, then use a Reckless Ember Topaz. Finally, for blue sockets, follow the same rules as yellows of using red when the socket bonus is less than 10 intellect. Whenever 10 or more, use a Veiled Demon's Eye. Now, as for enchants, I'm just going to assume you're tailoring and engineering as these are your 2 best professions. Our head slot will use an Arcanum of Hygel. Shoulders will be Greater Inscription of Charged Lodestone. Cloak will be Light Wave Embroidery. For chest, you want Peerless stats. For wrist, you want Mighty Intellect. For gloves, you want either Haste or Greater Mastery, depending on your current stats. You also want to add Synapse Springs from Engineering. For legs, you want Master's Spell Thread. For feet, you want Lava Walker, or else Precision if you aren't hit capped. For your weapon, you want Power Torrent. And then finally, for your offhand, you want Superior Intellect. As for consumables, your food should always provide 90 intellect, so you want either Severed Sagefish Head, Seafood Magnifique Feast, or Fortune Cookies. Your flask should be a flask of Draconic Mind, and your best buff potion is Volcanic Potion. So, I know that was a lot of information, and hopefully I didn't bore you to death, but I guess if I did, then you wouldn't be able to dislike the video anyway, so I guess it's actually okay. All jokes aside, I hope this video helped you out with any questions you might have had about Arcane Mage. If there's anything I didn't mention that you would like to know, feel free to drop a comment down below and I will get back to you as soon as possible. If you did find this video informative or entertaining, then I would appreciate it if you would leave a like. And if you would like to see more future videos, don't forget to subscribe. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.